Things are heating up in the U.S. Senate election, and we have today one of the candidates in the Democratic primary. This is News Behind the News. I'm Malia Zimmerman, and I want to welcome Ed Case to the show.
Good to be back with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to have you back. You've been on before many times, but I wanted to bring you back on because there's some really interesting issues happening right now with this whole thing with, you had a new poll that was just released yesterday. You've had an issue where you can't seem to get Congresswoman Hirono to show up and debate with you. And of course, we've invited her to the show. And then there's a lot of other interesting issues that are coming up with the Democratic convention and so on. So first of all, tell us about this poll that just was released yesterday.
Well, we're 80 days away from the August 11th primary. And you know, one thing I want to say, first of all, is it's August 11th. It's not the Saturday in September. It's August 11th. So it's not like you can get to the end of summer and then start thinking about an election. By the end of the summer, this is going to be over. So it's coming up on us very, very fast. And I simply felt that we needed to go out there and do a quick gut check on where we stood in terms of the Democratic primary. And so we went out in my campaign and polled independent pollster and asked how we were doing among likely Democratic primary voters. And the results just came back. A poll was done just about 5 or 6 days ago as we taped this. And we're in the lead slightly, 46% to 45% for my opponent, Mazie Hirono. And,
so 1 point ahead of Mazie.
1 point ahead of Mazie, 9% undecided. I actually think, and it's not a surprise to me, I think we've been running about even for months now. I think that voters are doing what we asked them to do, which is just think it through. Don't do a knee-jerk reaction about how you should or shouldn't vote or what anybody told you to vote. Think about who you want your next senator to be. Think about who you want to bring out of the Democratic primary to face Linda Lingle in the general, and let's move forward. So I'm really encouraged by the poll results themselves and also by some of the underlying trends because, for example, one trend there was among Democratic primary voters, we have higher favorables than Mazie or unfavorables than Mazie. We were at about 62 favorable and 30 unfavorable. And I'm going to convince that 30% to change their minds between now and the election. But that's a good solid mix. And I think that what's even more encouraging than that is that as we move through all of the segments of the people that were polled, we're really maintaining our favorability in all of those segments, every segment. So men versus women, older versus younger, whatever the distributions are. And Mazie has her pockets of support, but she's not uniform right across the board. So from our perspective, that's really, really encouraging news because we got a good solid foundation going into the final 80 days of what's going to be a pretty fast and furious couple of months.
So we'd really like to see you side by side debating, and I know we've talked about that in the past where right as you were coming on the last show, that was the day where she had not agreed to any debates yet, and then the next day after we taped the show, she agreed to 5 debates, and of course one of those has already been postponed. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, first of all,
but they're not really debates, though. I guess.
I was about to correct you on that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, forums where you say something and then she says something, right? Okay.
No, four of them when there's like a parallel discussion going on.
Yeah.
There's no interchange at all.
Right.
Well, this kind of dates back to really the beginning of this year as we got into this election year, and basically what we suggested to Mazie was that the two of us go around the state and debate like they did in the old days of candidates kind of getting on a flatbed truck and driving around the Big Island when I was growing up and stopping in the towns and debating and moving on to the next town. Voters got a good solid look at you, certainly the same way that U.S. Senate candidates are debating right across this country right now. Of course, in the presidential election, we've seen many, many debates, and we're certainly going to see some more debates in the coming months. And the mayor's race right here on Oahu, no problem debating there. So we suggested that to Mazie, and in the meantime, of course, many, many organizations came along and invited us to debate. I think they appreciate how important this is, including all of our commercial TV stations who offered 4 statewide TV debates. So had we gone through those 4 statewide TV debates, we would have reached 100% of the voters. And other organizations such as the Konokohala Chamber of Commerce, even my own party, the Hawaii County Democrats, the Oahu Democrats, the state Democrats who are having their convention, our convention this weekend as we speak. And the number of invitations built up to about 12 or 13, and Mazie came out about 6 weeks ago and it turned down 7 or 8 of them and accepted 5. But the 5 she accepted were really the most minimal reach possible, not debates, just completely ignored the vast majority of the electorate. And you know, I thought that was, as I said at the time, an insult to the voters, because I thought that it was owed to the voters. I believe that candidates owe it to the voters to tell them what they think and to get up side by side and let them size us up. But more importantly, almost, when you're talking about the United States Senate, which is kind of a big job if you think about it, you have to debate on the floor of the United States Senate. You don't have handlers around you. You don't have somebody feeding a teleprompter. You don't have somebody with one of those earpieces like the newscasters have, telling you what to say next and ask next. I mean, it's you on the floor, advocating for your state, advocating for your country, for what you believe in. So debating is a job requirement as a United States Senator, and I've likened it to somebody that writes me and asks me to hire them, sends me a resume, sends me a videotape, whatever it might be. I'm going to go through a personal interview before I hire them. I'm not going to skip that. So it's kind of like her saying, well, okay, I want the job, but I'm not going to show that I can do the job. So anyway, the last couple of months, unfortunately, I've seen her not change her mind at all. In fact, she's turned down more debate invitations. Most recent ones she turned down were the Honolulu Japanese Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii. So that's actually 4 that I know of, business organizations now, that she's turned down, starting with Smart Business Hawaii in January. And then the Kona Kohala Chamber of Commerce, the Honolulu Japanese Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, and another couple. So I thought that was sad. And what can I say? It's not conduct that I think a United States Senator should undertake.
Now, her side of the story is, well, this is an unprecedented number of debates that we're going to have between candidates. But like you point out, this is only in a small forum where maybe there's only a handful of people there.
If we did all of the 5, and as you pointed out, one of them has been put off. If we did all of the 5, I would calculate that the total reach for all of those 5 is, what, 2,500 to 5,000 people, including public radio, public TV, which I very much support and very much admire, and I will always do debates on public radio and public TV. But their reach is simply nothing close to the reach of a commercial TV station running a statewide TV debate in prime time. And we're going to do 4 of those. So sorry, I don't buy that. What is unprecedented is the level of avoidance by a major candidate in a major race wanting a major seat. That's unprecedented. I mean, nobody has ever done that before. So, that's...
So what do you think the reason is for this strategy, since she won't?
Well, I can only surmise 2 things. First of all I can surmise is that for whatever reason they think they're sitting on a very comfortable lead, and that any debate is a downside risk for them. And of course, as we've just shown them, they're not sitting on a comfortable lead. We're running neck and neck with them. I think the other reason is that they just don't like the direct contrast between her and me in terms of the ability to stand up and defend your state, defend your country, and advocate on the floor of the United States Senate. And I think probably a third reason is we actually would get into what she thinks.
Now,
we haven't really seen what she
I was
thinks.
just going to bring that up, because one of the things that you said at a recent press conference was, look, I've released these 10 policy papers on what my plans are for all these different topics, military, Native Hawaiian affairs, and business, and so on. And then she's released what?
She hasn't released any.
Nothing.
Well, in fairness to her, she's released 1 or 2.
Okay.
She released something called an Energy and Food Sustainability Agenda about 2 weeks ago. But I would invite anybody who's watching this to go onto her website. I invite you to go onto her website and find out what she thinks, what her agenda is. And then I invite you to go on my website, edcase.com, take a look at my agenda and see what I think. I think really that, with 80 days to go, as the poll just showed, I mean, people know generally who we are. we know that Mazie was born in Japan and immigrated to this country at a young age and was brought up by a single mother. That's something that she's been very clear about right from the get-go. And we know that, I hope people know that, I was born and raised in Hilo and fourth generation of my family in Hawaii, and I've had deep roots here and worked in the private and public sectors. So I think people have a general sense of who we are. Now it's time to discuss, what does that translate into? We've both served in the United States Congress. We've both had comparable careers, at least in public service. I've had 30 years in the private sector, which she hasn't had any. But I think the bottom line now is, what have we done with our upbringings? What has it translated into? What is our actual record in Congress? What do we think today? And what is our agenda going forward? I think those are fair questions. And I think one thing that's going to happen, in all honesty, as we get into the last 80 days, is Mazie's just going to remain stuck in the past, keep on talking about, her background and never translate into, record, thoughts, and agenda. So I think it's time to move to specific issues. I think it's time to move to, how exactly are we going to fix Washington, D.C.? How exactly are we going to grow an economy? How exactly are we going to balance a budget? Mazie talks all the time about preserving Social Security and Medicare. I agree we have to preserve Social Security and Medicare. Now, I've done that by laying out my agenda. Very, very specific agenda. I've gotten through about 10 very, very specific agenda items now, and I got a number to go. I've put my congressional record on my website. There's a link on my website to my congressional voting history. She hasn't done any of that. So that, I think, is another reason why we need to debate, because we need to talk about what we think about it, what we actually intend to do.
Well, there's a difference, real big difference, I guess, here in transparency levels, where you're trying to be as transparent as possible, and the other side seems to be kind of being as hidden as possible. So I guess they're just crafting an image that they want.
Well, I think really what they've decided upon is that maybe the reality is not what they're on. And that they want to micromanage the image, develop some very slick infomercials, which is what they're going to be, and then just throw them on TV with a ton of money and hope that people, get distracted from what I think is really important, which is, what are your capabilities, what is your record, what are your thoughts, and who can provide the leadership in Washington.
Now that kind of reminds me of this upcoming convention, which I know this show might after that, but the coming convention where you were supposed to actually debate her, and now that's been just postponed. We don't know till when. And you offered to have another forum that same day with HU, Hawaii Pacific University. She didn't want to show up to that. But instead, she's bought time at the convention. Tell me about that.
Well,
that's an interesting
there's actually
twist.
Two separate things that happened just in the last couple of days that are comical at best. I've called it by a worse word, and that word was quoted in the media, and maybe I shouldn't have used it, but I felt strongly about it. The word was pathetic, by the way.
I was going to say pathetic, despicable. I couldn't remember which
one.
No,
it was not despicable. No, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
Sad.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how I feel about it. Well, the first thing that happened was that throughout all of this stuff, we actually finally did agree on a night when the Oahu Democrats, probably about the safest place for Mazie to have a discussion, right?
Right.
The Oahu Democrats hosted not a debate, but a joint discussion. And on that night, we were going to proceed. And then the Oahu Dems put it off indefinitely. Why? I'm not really sure. Reportedly, there were some concerns by the Mazie's folks about the format of the debate or the joint discussion, which I think is unfortunate, because I would have pretty much agreed to anything. I mean, hey, you want to sit to the left or the right, you want 2 minutes worth of questions, no responding, you know, come on.
Right.
Let's just go with it.
Right.
So we had an open night sitting there. Mazie is home for a congressional recess. And so I suggested to her, well, let's just do our own debate. I mean, the media will come.
Yeah.
People will watch.
Sure.
And never heard back from her. But then Hawaii Pacific University, who had been one of the people who had asked for a debate initially. We had accepted, and she turned them down. Came in and said, "Well, we'll host it." So I thought, well, let's go for it, you know. So we accepted, turned them down. So I don't know what she's doing that night, but it ain't joint discussing.
Right.
And then the second thing that happened has to do with our state Democratic convention, which is, as we tape this weekend, just a few days away. And very unfortunately, in that situation, the state Democrats wanted us. This is the most important race in the state this year, and it's the most important race for Democrats.
Yeah.
So let's not, you know, downplay the importance of this race. The Democrats themselves wanted a joint presentation from Mazie and me by a debate. And they said, that's how we're going to do this. They did it, by the way, also for the Congressional District 2 race, and they're doing that. So they invited the two of us, and I said yes, and she said no, which really shocked me because that's your state convention.
Right.
That's your party.
Right.
Then what happened was that she came back to them and asked, can I speak to the convention then? And the state Democrats said, no, you can't. The way that we wanted this to occur was through a debate, so we're happy to do a debate between you and Case. And she said no to that. And so as a result, amazingly, we've got a situation where the major candidates for the biggest race in the state, speaking to their own party or going to their own party's convention, are not provided a routine speaking opportunity.
Yeah.
For whatever reason then, this is the comical part almost that verges into the other word used. Our party then, as a fundraising tool, I think, offered to sell time to candidates for quote-unquote rally time at $500 a minute. And Mazie grabbed that one, and so she spent a bunch of money. So she is going to speak. She's going to give a little infomercial to the convention, and I just I think that's wrong. I think I'm not going to do that, both on principle and because you know.
That's a lot of money for $500 a minute.
Yeah.
That's
for $500 a minute, I think I should just stand outside the convention and talk to people as they go down the escalator.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can get a lot of television time with that, actually.
$500 a minute will take you a ways.
That's right. Yeah. Right. Wow. Okay. So basically it's going to end up that she's going to speak and pay for it, and you're not going to speak at all. And in the biggest race that there is in this state.
That's about what it comes down to. She's going to, and what I halfway joked about, but I'm very serious about, is that this is an unbelievable situation in which she is paying not to debate. Now that's taking it even a step further. And you know, although you know, there's elements of Shakespearean, whatever I want to say, farce or comedy in all of this, this is deadly serious stuff. This is a person who wants to be a United States Senator. Probably wants to be a senator for a generation of incredible national leadership needs, generation when Hawaii is going to see probably the end of Senator Inoue's career, and whoever is elected will step up to the senior senator spot. And they just seem to be going to every single avenue possible not to engage and not to say who this person is. So, you know, I really think that that's too bad. I hope voters, you know, see through it.
Well, okay, tell me about this whole thing. You've been on the show before with where we talked about first you had this, you know, this conflict with Senator Inouye where he, you know, didn't support you with Danakaka, over Danakaka, and then he didn't support you with he helped Senator Colleen Hanabusa, who was the state president, Senate president at the time, over. And then it seemed like you guys might have had like a little powwow and gotten, we talked about this on the show, where you know, seem to have gotten, you know, at least made up a little bit, and then maybe he would remain neutral in this Senate election. But suddenly now we hear he's fundraising for Mazie Hirono, and you know, I just, it's like instead of remaining neutral, he hasn't done that again. So. I want to ask you about your thoughts on that, but there is a reaction in the party where several members of the Oahu Democrat, I guess you call it Oahu County Democrats, had a resolution, this was a couple of weeks ago, where they introduced a resolution, and it passed unanimously from what I'm told, which basically asked Senator Inouye, not specifically by name, but congressional delegation, the governor, and the top officials in the Democratic Party, and also the national top Democratic officials, not to take sides before the primary election. So that would mean that Senator Inouye is basically being asked, don't take sides, don't fundraise for Mazie, don't advocate for her, don't show up at her fundraisers, don't help her behind the scenes. And that's a pretty big move for the Oahu County Democrats to have come out with that and backed it unanimously. And of course, that's going to come up at the convention this weekend. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess first of all, on the overall tradition of the Democratic Party has been the senior members of the party, whether they be the elected officials in Congress or the governor, or back when we had a partisan mayorship, the mayors, and the leaders of the party, the chair of the party, would remain out of contested Democratic primaries. And I think that there's a good solid foundation for that. I think that the real reason for that is to try to allow the party to develop all the time. And I have never, ever bought off on the view of some members of my party that contested primaries are bad for my party. I think contested primaries overall are good for our party. And the reason I think that is that I think, first of all, they prevent kind of the assemblages of machines, political machines, and of course we've had a pretty good one going here in Hawaii for a while. They inject new blood into the party. They do, in fact, assure that a good solid candidate is going to come out of the primary to face whoever the candidate is in the general. I've seen there's been lots of situations where you really get the weaker candidate backed in a primary, and then those people lose in the general. Mm-hmm. I could have some of those own situations in my own career. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's a reason for this tradition that has been followed, but has been eroding of late. And I think that what we see happening within our party, especially the Oahu County Committee, and not just Oahu County, actually, although the other counties did not actually come up with the same resolution, they feel the same way, that there's a little bit of a rebellion going against this kind of machine politics, this political bossism that is reflected in this, and getting away from the neutrality stuff. And it's not just this race. This has been going on for a couple of years. It went on, for example, in the governor's race 2 years ago, mm-hmm. When Senator Inouye did back Mayor Hanneman against Governor Abercrombie, or in the mayor's race 2 years ago when Mayor Carlisle was not his choice. And so, or for that matter, in the presidential race where Senator Inouye wanted Hillary Clinton to be president. Of course, everybody else wanted Obama to be president. So I think that there's a real reaction going to that, and so the fact that the Oahu County Democrats adopted this resolution saying, "Hey, stay out of these races unanimously," I think is pretty interesting. Of course, I understand there's a little bit of an effort going on at the state convention to make sure that that resolution is not passed.
I was just going to bring that up, right? I've uncovered an email, and it was basically from Linda Chu Takayama, who was the 2010 campaign chair for Senator Inouye, and it went to Betsy Lynn, who's a campaign manager for, campaign spokesperson for Hirono, Mazie Hirono, and she also worked with her on her staff before. She's her chief of staff. The email also went to the chief of staff for Senator Inouye, Sabas, and also Sarah Daly, who was the special assistant for Senator Inouye. And I think there was some other ones. Congresswoman Hanabusa was also on this email list. And basically, it was for all private emails, no government emails used. And it basically said, we want to kill this resolution before it even gets to the floor. So here there's this resolution talking about being neutral and so on. And it was from Linda Chu Takayama, who has worked as the campaign coordinator for the coordinated campaign of the Democrats. She's not there right now, but that's a group that's supposed to bring unity to the Democrats against the Republicans. And you have Also, the chair, the committee woman, the national committee woman, I think her name was J.D. Nielsen, also on this email, and she's supposed to remain neutral and help all the Democrats, help all fundraising for it. So you have these people that are all supposed to be remaining neutral, and this resolution that's saying, would you remain neutral? And instead of that, they're actually trying to kill the resolution before it even comes to the floor for a vote. So it is a real drama going on there with this whole inside fighting in the party, and it's important because it's going to determine, as you've said in some statements before, the new generations that are coming up and who has a chance at becoming a leader.
Well, I read your story and I thought it was an amazing story, and I thought I had mixed feelings. I mean, I had a lot of emotions when I read your story, especially the email that you got, because I think it illustrated exactly what the problem is. That a small group of folks want to control the outcome of politics in my party, our party, and in Hawaii. And I think that has been wrong. I think that has hurt our party. I think that has hurt Hawaii. I think it is that kind of politics has left no room for the next generation of leaders to grow up. And I think I mean, the proof is in the pudding. The next generation of leaders among Democrats in Hawaii. You can probably come up with a few names. Mm-hmm. But you look at other states, I mean, they've got a whole cadre of people. You look at the U.S. Congress. They have a whole generation of leaders coming up. We don't have that in Hawaii. There's a reason for that. It's too tightly controlled. You're told whether you can run or not. And I don't buy that. And so I thought it was, it shocked me when I read it, your story, and yet I wasn't surprised, and I was sad in a way, and I thought, boy, if there was a better example of why things have to change and why the Oahu Democrats are upset enough to buck some pretty powerful interests to try to, bring this to a head at the convention, all power to them. I think that debate has to be had.
So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, with your election, with Governor Cayetano going up against Kirk Caldwell, Kirk Caldwell's obviously favored by Senator Inouye. He worked for Senator Inouye and so on. So did his wife. His wife's been the campaign chair for Senator Inouye. So with those two elections alone, we're going to see, has the party bucked Senator Inouye's power and control, or are they going to keep going with the same thing that they've always done and do what he says? And they don't always says, but in this case, I think your race is going to be a very interesting one to watch. Now, we're already out of time, but I want to tell people they can go on your website. And what is your website?
www.edcase.com.
That's easy. That's easy to remember. And we'll have another show on again, and we keep inviting Mazie, so we'll invite her again, and we'll see what will happen. But we appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts and your story.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. This has been News Behind the News. Thank you for joining us. Aloha.